Shorten, there was a story in the newspapers this morning about your mother. Is this campaign dirtier than the last one you fought?
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of time on this answer, and I thank you for asking it. My mum suffered a catastrophic heart attack in her sleep on the night, sometime on the night of Saturday the 5th of April, the 6th of April 2014. So she never woke up. So it's been about 5 years to last month when she passed away. I miss her every day. I sometimes, I get a sense of how she would react to things because she's such a strong and clever woman. But I'm glad she wasn't here today to read that rubbish. Just rubbish. But let's go through why this is an issue. On Monday night in Q&A, I was again asked about my leadership style and what drives you. And I think that's a very fair question. But as part of my answer, I spoke about my mother. Now, I've actually spoken about my mum before. Many of you might have been here when I spoke about her on April the 26th this year at the Women's Policy launch. But one thing I did say about my mum, and I started to explain her story. She born in Victoria, grew up in North Melbourne, 1935, peak of the Depression. Her mum was a bookbinder, her dad was a printer. They've even got ancestors in their family tree who were convicts. I'm waiting for that to come out in the Telegraph. She came from very modest circumstances. She topped her school. She went to a Catholic convent school, the family were Irish Catholic. She got the best marks. But no one in my family had ever gone to university. She was very keen to do law. She had a great brain. But family of four, she was the eldest. They didn't have the money to pay for her tuition to go to university. She had to take a teacher scholarship. Not unknown. But, my mum is the bravest person I've known, and she would tell us the story. She'd get on the tram and go into town, go all the way to Melbourne University. What a world it must have been. Not a lot of women went to university then. Now, she made every post a winner. Her two younger sisters both became nuns. They both subsequently left holy orders. The youngest brother, my uncle, who's still alive, he eventually went on to do law. I come from a great family. Mum, she was very brave. When she got her teacher scholarship, I remember her youngest brother, my surviving Uncle George, telling me the story. They'd go down to Station Pier because my mum wanted to see the world. So they'd have the streamers. When you see the pictures of the old shipping liners setting off in the 50s? The reason why they held the streamers is the people on the wharf would hold one end of the streamer and their family on the boat. And then eventually as the ship sailed, it would break. And I remember my uncle telling me as I was preparing the eulogy for my mum 5 years ago that he thought that she was the bravest woman she'd ever met. So she taught. She taught in government schools. She taught in London. She was exposed to the Jesuits in London. That's why she sent me to a Jesuit school. She then came back and met my dad, who was a seafarer from England. And then what happened was she started teaching at university. Initially, she only had a casual contract because, of course, when you were a mother, you didn't get the sort of maternity leave that Labor's fought for since then. Eventually, she moved from a casual contract to a fixed term to a full contract. Do you know in the 1970s, while she was raising us, she did a PhD. Full-time, and, she raised us, she worked full-time and she did a PhD. Then in the 1980s, when we're still at school, Mum enrolled in law school in her late 40s. She worked full-time. She raised us. My dad was a good bloke, but let's not pretend. He worked on the waterfront. I'm not going to pretend that he would have passed the definition of modern families. He was, he didn't. A nice man, but he wasn't raising us. And so in the first year that Robert and I, my twin brother, went to university, she was there. Now, I'm not saying I was breaking any records for academic achievement in my first year of university, and the Telegraph doesn't have to research it, I put that out there. But Mum topped the law school. She was from the education faculty, and whilst you would, never want to say there were rivalry between university faculties, she was grey-haired, she was 50, 51, and she topped the university at law. She got a Supreme Court prize, which is the highest award you can get. And that wasn't meant to be the case, was it? You know, you're meant to be the commercial students who'd gone to the good schools, or, you know, the young ones, the young guns. Then she did her articles. She couldn't get articles at a law firm because, you know what, as much as we love law firms, when you're an older woman in your 50s, you don't sort of look young and jazzy and you're doing your work. She had to do it at the Leo Cousin Institute. Then she went to the bar, and I noticed the Telegraph said she was there for 6 years. I just wish some newspaper outlets would do some of their homework beyond that. She got about 9 briefs in her time. It was actually a bit dispiriting. She'd wanted to do law when she was 17. She didn't get that chance. She raised kids. At 50, she backed herself. At 53, going to the bar, she got a barrister and she read from, that's the technical term, that was the apprenticeship. She did her best. She went down and did some magistrates' court work. But she discovered in her mid-50s that sometimes you're just too old. And you shouldn't be too old, but she discovered the discrimination against older women. And so she eventually, while she kept her name on the bar roll for a number of years, she came back and she did other things. Do you know that my mum wrote the book on education and law in Australia? Brilliant. She's brilliant. And that's what drives me. She went back to Monash and taught. You know, I saw a pretty bloody lazy editorial. I didn't read it all because there's only so much time in your day and you can't afford to waste it on the rubbish. Said she achieved her dream. Who do some people in News Corp, or some, and it's not all the journalists, I make that very clear, who do some of these lazy people think they are? That because they think that I explained myself at Q&A on a Monday night, that they play gotcha shit about your life story, more importantly my mum's. I've spoken about my mum at length. I choose to give you that last bit of the battle of her time at the bar because my mum would want me to say to older women in Australia that just because you got grey hair, just because you didn't go to a special private school, just because you don't go to the right clubs, just because you're not part of some backslapping boys club, doesn't mean you should give up. What I said at Q&A is what drives me. People say, oh, Bill, you know, you're popular this or that, the polls, who are you? What I did on Monday night is I explained who I am. I explained what drives me. My mum is the smartest woman I've ever known. It has never occurred to me that women are not the equal of men. It's never occurred to me that women shouldn't be able to do everything. That is why I work with strong women. That is why I believe in the equal treatment of women. But it's more than that. My parents sent me to a rich school, but we were not rich. We were not poor. We were not rich. We were like hundreds of thousands of other families. My family spent all their spare cash on educating Robert and I. We had 3 holidays when we were kids. Who cares? I got a quality education. But the point about it is, my mum has taught me that what matters in life isn't how rich you are or how poor you are. It's not what religion you worship. It doesn't matter who you know, what church you go to, what priest you listen to. Mum told me it doesn't matter about your gender. It matters how hard you work. But if everyone got the same chance, everyone deserves the same chance. I'm going to finish up, Mark. My mum gave me another bit of advice. It's advice I follow. I'd go to her because she's so smart. When you've got your own encyclopedia, it'd be sometimes long before the internet, just go to Mum. And she would never give me the free ride. She'd say, look it up. Look it up. So I'd say to whoever thought they organised a political hit on me in the election to cast some doubt, I can hear my mum now saying, don't worry about that rubbish. But she might tell whoever's pulling down a 6-figure sum at the Daily Telegraph, look it up, look it up. All of what I've said is all of what has been said before. Thank you.